This assignment is about process choice at Renovation Homeware, which is a manufacturer of dining room furniture sets selling through retailers all across the country and has been having some issues lately. So you have a little bit of background given to you about the company and historically the kinds of customers that they've had, and you've been asked to give some response to some of the challenges that they've been facing, which are clearly because of changing profile of customers. So what do they need to do in order to react to that changing profile of customers? What are some of the suggestions that you can make based on operation strategy choices? So the specific questions that you had for this assignment were to focus on the causes of the current delivery date problems and the challenges in accepting the new large volume orders with the current process design. So they have a current process design, and what are the problems that they're facing in terms of large volume orders as well as delivery dates. A proposed process design for accepting the new large volume orders while continuing to serve the remaining customized order from the customers. So you were asked to come up with a way of being able to serve both customer segments. If Renovation chose to stay with both customers, the customers who care about customized products as well as those that wanted standardized high volume products, what would you suggest they do based on some of the things that you've seen in terms of operation strategy choices? And then you were asked to come up with other solutions. Let's say that they were to do a huge shift in terms of their strategy. What would they do or what could they do in terms of coming up with a completely new operations strategy, which would require a change in business strategy as well as marketing strategy as well. So those were the questions that you had in terms of analyzing this case for Renovation Homeware. So let's start with some of the background information that you had about this company. So it's a manufacturer of dining room furniture sets. They're historically known for the vast range of dining room sets that they can offer, many different designs that can be tweaked based on whatever the ultimate customer wants, whatever the retailer wants, and Renovation was ready to do that for them. Lately, they have been facing some issues in terms of the delivery dates. So what has been happening is that customers who seem to be okay with longer delivery schedules seem to be complaining about the longer delivery schedules and want them delivered in quicker time. And not only that, Renovation seems to be not making their promised delivery dates. So even if they had longer delivery dates and they were able to deliver on time earlier, they seem to not be able to make their delivery dates at the current point in time. So what may be some of the issues there? The customers seem to be shifting towards demanding higher volumes and lower prices. So earlier they used to have very small order quantities in terms of particular products. So they wanted a few pieces of customized products, and now they seem to be wanting high volume. So it seems to be good news from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective, that they're getting a lot of orders, but they seem to be also asking for, customers seem to be also asking for shorter lead times as well as lower prices. That didn't seem to be the issue before this. So why is this happening? So if you think about it, what is their historical process focus? What have they been focusing on until now, until they've started facing these issues? So historical customer profile has been low volume orders, customized orders, and accepting of longer lead times. So the obvious process choice for this would have been a job shop, right? Even without knowing even without giving too much specific information on how they would be arranged, you can think of their manufacturing shop to be arranged in a job shop kind of environment with different departments doing different things as needed for different types of designs for different types of dining room sets. So what goes with the job shop is the idea of flexibility in volumes and accepting changes. And then you can also think of other features about a job shop like skilled labor, like the idea of not thinking too much about changeover times, and also the idea of being able to expand capacity in small chunks. So that would be something that they would be able to do in a job shop. Now, what has happened is that their market has changed. So what are the recent challenges that they're facing is that there seems to be a mismatch in their process arrangement and their market that they're trying to serve, or the needs of the market that they're trying to serve. So the market has moved towards demanding high volume standard products and has been asking for shorter lead times, right? They want dependability in terms of lead times, but they also want shorter lead times now, right? So that's something that that they seem to be struggling with. Renovation seems to be struggling with. What they are trying to do is serve both types of customers. So if you think about the underlying reasons for why they are facing these problems, you can see based on this mismatch what must be happening. You can make inferences about what must be happening. So when you have the high volume as well as the customized products going through the same kind of process, and in this case it's a job shop process. A job shop process is not going to think about rapid changeovers, right? They're not going to think about reducing setup times. They're just simply because they're not dealing with the idea that it's going to eat into their capacity when they have a large setup time. So they are easy about making changeovers, and they don't really consider them to be too much of an issue. Also, the fact that now they would have to do a lot of changeovers between high volume and low volume orders would mean that the low volume orders would get stuck behind the large volume orders, and then the large volume orders will have to be broken up, because otherwise you are keeping the low volume orders behind for a longer period of time. So there would be an increase in that sense in the number of changeovers that they would be doing. Even for the same product for a high volume order, they would have had to do more changeovers. It would be definitely challenging in terms of scheduling for the same reasons. How do you schedule the different types of orders, the customized and the large volume, without there being too much of a lead time for your customers? The value of skilled labor. As you're increasing volume and you're trying to make more standardized stuff, you have skilled labor whose talents are being wasted when they're making the same product over and over again, very standardized product that doesn't need too much customization. So in that sense, your costs are going to remain high while your customers are asking for lower prices. And the idea of expanding capacity is very different when you think about a job shop environment versus when you want to do it for high volume. Thinking about expanding capacity for a job shop, meaning that you would have to add specialized equipment in each department if you wanted to increase the total volume, and even if you were to do that in small increments, it would turn out to be very expensive because you're not thinking of things like automation, things like taking stuff through in quick flow time. You're not going to be able to get cost effective in terms of expanding your capacity. What are the needs of their new customers, and what kind of a process arrangement would that warrant? So the new customers are wanting high volume, lower prices, they want discounts in their prices, and they want quick lead times. So what is a process arrangement that would be good for this? Maybe they don't have enough volume for going for a line kind of arrangement, but definitely more like a batch, more something like where they are having at least some steps that are put into a line, or a line that they are changing over between different types of products, so that they can take advantage of the high volumes and get them to flow through the process much quicker than they would in a job shop where they would have jumbled flows. The process arrangement would be more like a batch. It would be more with longer runs. You would focus on the idea of fewer setups and try to optimize, take that setup and that you might have and use it over a larger production run that you would do, so that you are spreading that fixed cost over a larger number of units. You would be focusing on that, or renovation should be focusing on that. You would seek opportunities for automation, taking the the artistic perspective out of the picture in some sense, or at least to some extent, because customers are not demanding it. So the skilled labor coming out and the automation going in, at least for some parts of the process. You would be focusing more on conformance to specifications. When customers want a high volume product, they're expecting standardized product. They want product to look alike. They're going to accept orders based on something that's in the showroom, and then what gets delivered should be more or less similar to what they saw in the showroom. So the focus has to shift from it being creativity and making different types of units to making conforming to specifications that the customer has. And finally, they would have to give up this idea of flexibility in terms of letting customers make changes until the last minute. They would have to freeze the production schedule. Otherwise, again, going back to the idea of changeovers, they would be hit with a lot of changeovers. So they would have to have this idea of focusing on freezing the production schedule and saying, look, you have to tell us in advance how many products of what kind you need, and then so what would happen is that some of the customers who were earlier able to make the changes might not be happy, but this is something that they need to think about if they're going to think about serving those customers that want high volume and lower prices. Right. Now, next part of this assignment asked you to think about proposed process designs for if they were to combine both of these types of customers, right? So what would be a good process design? And here I give you two options that you could have considered, right? One is the idea of a plant within a plant. Now, if you recall, we may have talked about this, where you can have the idea of a certain part of the machine, the shop, having a job shop kind of arrangement, whereas a certain part of the shop, of the manufacturing shop, having a batch kind of arrangement. What do we mean by that? You have both of them under the same roof. That gives you some advantages in terms of sharing of knowledge, but you use the job shop for customized and you use the batch for high volume. So that would be one design, a plant within a plant kind of an arrangement. Now, we have an example here of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, which produces, and we may have talked about this earlier, that they produce their motorcycles that go into the showroom, the standardized motorcycles, as well as those that are customized for particular customers. Both of them are made pretty much under the same roof, but they have very distinct processes separated from each other, although there is some sharing of knowledge and some sharing of competencies between those two processes as well. So that would be one arrangement that they could use, that they could consider if they wanted to go after both these customer segments, go after the order winners and qualifiers of both these customer segments. The second arrangement that you could have thought of is maybe think of splitting the process, right? So the idea of having a made-to-stock arrangement up to a certain extent, and then maybe continuing with a high volume for the standardized products, and then having a job shop for the customization for the products that are going to be customized. Now, this would need some type of adjustment to the expectations that the customers have, what kind of customization you would be able to offer. It should not go all the way back into the process, so you can push product all the way to a certain extent based on made to stock kind of, or having a standardized product, more like a standardized product to a certain extent, and then from then on getting it customized based on whatever the customer wants. So these are two possible combinations that you would have thought of, that you could have thought of, and both should, in theory, be able to work if Renovation would decide to go after both types of customers. So the other part of the assignment that you had to think about was the process-related decisions that you would have to think about if you were going after both types of customers, and what would they be? Your purchasing for your process would have to be high volume. So earlier, when you're talking about customized product, making it specifically for certain customers and having a flexible process, your purchases may not have been very high volume. You may not have thought about it too much. MRP system or an ERP system that helps you schedule better, an enterprise resource planning system or a manufacturing resource planning system that helps you plan better based on what is the demand of that parent product and breaking it down into the different sub-assemblies that are needed and sending the orders out to different departments that need to make those sub-assemblies so that the final product can be assembled. That's something that they would have to think about based on this high volume market that seems to be coming up at a faster rate. Forecasting of production volumes, what kind of volumes are they expecting would be needed in order to make investments into large volume kind of automated batch systems or line systems. They would have to at least limit the number of designs that they would offer. So earlier we talked about different process arrangements, and there we said we need to adjust the expectations of customers at least to some extent. So renovation may have to do that to some extent. They may have to go back to the design process for designing their furniture and think about more modular designs and part commonality. Can they have certain types of assemblies, sub-assemblies in stock that they can combine in different ways based on the orders that they get, and that they can store, that they can keep in stock whenever they have slack times from their large volume lines. They can focus on reducing the changeover time. That would be useful in terms of being able to have a line that is high volume at the same time, not that inflexible in terms of changeover. And then they would also have to think about their employees in terms of the skill of the employees and what kind of skill set they would expect their employees to have. So those would be some process-related decisions that they would need to make. And here you can see that these might have impact on their hiring. These might have impact on their design and R&D as well. Now, finally, the last part of the assignment asked you to come up with alternatives. So think radically and say, what if renovation would decide that we want to make we want to state the terms here. We want to be in this market on our own terms. So here, I give you two choices that you could have come up with. One is either they could have focused on the customized and said, this is what we're good at. We don't really want to get into that standard product market, and we will go after different customers who care about this customization. We'll move away from our current customers who are getting into high volume and go find a different niche, a market that cares about what we are good at. So that would preserve their core competencies. They would continue to offer what they're offering, and then they would have to work with business strategy as well as their marketing strategy folks to see if that's something that everybody agrees with and that they can go after in an aligned fashion. So that would be important if they were to decide on this kind of a focus going forward. Another focus that they could have, an alternative focus, the opposite extreme of the customized would be completely give up on the customized and focus only on the standardized. So no breaking up the process from being a job shop to a plant within a plant, or a combining two different types of processes, but completely going after the high volume market, which would require a drastic change in terms of not only the production process, but also, as it says here, their purchasing, their scheduling, their technology, and the people. So this would be, in some sense, a bigger risk getting into a market that they may not be very familiar with. But this is certainly something that they would consider as being a choice that they have to make.